Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you in my basement in the great state of Kansas. In today's video, I'm continuing my series of ranking or listing my 100 favorite albums. This time I'm at number 31 on my list, which is the album Deja Vu. It came out in 1970 by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. And so stay tuned to see my feelings here on Jason the Old Millennial. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well here on a Thursday afternoon. It's pretty cold here in Kansas. Some snow on the ground now, so we're getting really into the winter weather here. But yeah, continuing my top 100 favorite albums. I'm getting to my top 30 now on my list. And I mean, every album is just absolutely amazing. Every album I listen to, I'm like, wow, this is such a good album. Like, how is this so low on my list? It feels like. But then I look at the other albums in front of it. I'm like, all these other albums are amazing too. So it's hard to really rank all these because I just look at every album and go, man, this is so amazing. But it's fun to do rankings and lists. And so when you do lists, you have to put an album somewhere. And so for this, I have number 31 on my list, Deja Vu. And I got the album. I bought it recently, this last Christmas, with some Christmas money I got from my parents, from Barnes and Nobles, in fact. Kind of a pretty cool cover here, kind of a Civil War type cover for some reason. Civil War has nothing to do with the album, but it's just something different, something new, or not just let's just sit here and pose, but let's do something a little more to it. I like the, like I said, I like this different, a little bit different feel of an album, and the lettering and everything is pretty cool. Nothing on the back. Shows off before, has a lot of photos in it. Of course, as you know, we lost this guy here just a week or two ago, Mr. David Crosby, part of two absolutely Hall of Fame groups, the Byrds and here Crosby, Stills, and Nash. What do you say about David Crosby? He was a very difficult human being. I've read a biography on the band Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and I've read Graham Nash's autobiography, I think, called Wild Tales. I've read that once before. So, and I've seen some documentaries on the band. Crosby, Stills, Nash is one of my favorite bands of all time. Crosby, Stills, Nash / Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Absolutely love them. Just the best harmony group, like, I think ever made. And also great musicians as well. I mean, you have Stephen Stills and Neil Young on here, which are two of the great guitar players of all time. Also great songwriting. I mean, it's just a great combination of songwriting, singing, and music playing as well. And yeah, Dave Crosby, definitely integral part to this group and to the Byrds, yeah, I said, in the Music Hall of Fame. And it's interesting because you look at his life, like I said, reading the biographies, I mean, he was a very difficult human being. He got kicked out of the Byrds. He didn't get along with them, B, he was late to, I think, to rehearsals and to gigs, and he was a bit unreliable. He had a huge drug problem. When I read about a lot of, rock and rollers have drug problems, he's definitely in the top echelon of guys I've heard of that or read about that are just crazy drug habit. I mean, mounds of cocaine, obviously slept around a lot of women, sometimes two at a time from what I've read, had off and on girlfriends. He had one girlfriend who died in a car wreck tragically, and it really set him to a huge depression, and he got more into drugs, and it was a pretty terrible thing. At one time, he went to jail for drug and gun charges. He loved to have guns. He had a lot of guns, and he wasn't afraid to shoot at people that came to his property either. It was one of the things. And all the stuff he had, he needed a liver transplant back in the 90s. Almost died at that point, but got a liver transplant and survived and lived, another 30 years or whatever. So almost 30 years. So that's crazy. The fact that he made it to 81 years old or something like that. I mean, that's pretty crazy from all the wild times that he had. It's a wonder he didn't die of drug overdose. It's a wonder that he didn't die young from heart problems or something like that from all the drugs he did. But he definitely, I think, mellowed out a little more towards the end and was working really great with Graham Nash and him, they made some albums together. One of my favorite duos. Both voices work so well together. One of my favorite albums is their album that came out in 2005 called Crosby and Nash. And it's on my top 100 favorite albums list. I went and saw Crosby, Stills, Nash in concert back in 2005 when they were promoting that album. It was one of the great concerts I've ever gone to, and just absolute, dream. Seeing Paul McCartney in concert was the biggest dream I had. And then Crosby, Stills, Nash is right up there as one of the dream groups I wanted to see, and so I was so happy I got to see them in concert. They sound great. They sang quite a bit of songs on this album, in fact, and sound really good still. Back in 2005, they sounded great. But yeah, Crosby, one of the things is, like, he's not the best singer, he's not the best songwriter, I would say, not the best guitar player. He just does fine and everything, but man, he sounds great when he's in a group. Both the Byrds and the Crosby, Stills, Nash Young groups have great harmonies, and because he's really good at singing with other people and harmonizing with them and sounding great. And so you definitely have to give a lot of credit to him. He's a two-time Hall of Famer, legendary, kind of musician, singer, songwriter, whatever you want to say. Anyways, what I'll say about Crosby anyway. So yeah, so it's interesting. Now I'm doing this album not too long after he died, and I got this recently, listened to it. Man, amazing album. Listening to this again, I was like, man, all these songs are so good, and absolute wonderful if you like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I mean, and this is probably usually considered it's definitely considered one of their great albums. I remember VH1 back in the day did like 100 best albums, and this was pretty high on the list. Rolling Stones last read did it made 220 on their 500 best albums. 220, which to me seemed really low. Like, it should be much higher than 220 on the list, but I mean, still, it's kind of the top half, I guess, of the 500 albums. Definite must. Came out in 1970. This is their second album. This first album was just Crosby, Stills, Nash. They added Neil Young at this point when they made this album just a year later, which is crazy. I mean, this is a great 2 years for this group. And they just formed in 1969 after Graham Nash left the Hollies. Stephen Stills and Neil Young were part of Buffalo Springfield. That group broke up, and so Steele was already on his own at that point. So David Crosby was in Byrds, but he got basically kicked out of that band. And so him and Stills were pretty good friends, and they were just hanging out and playing and kind of writing music together. And it seemed like they were kind of coming up with maybe a duo or something. And then Graham Nash joined after he left the Hollies. He joined, and they found that they had a really good trio, of course. And then they started writing music and went into the music studio and came out with a really great album, Crosby, Stills, Nash, 1969. Woodstock was their second gig of all time. Oops, sorry, hit my camera. So that's pretty crazy. One of the most famous concerts of all time. Woodstock is their second gig, and of course they have a really great, one of my favorite moments in that concert footage is them playing from that first album. So then we come to the second album, which is, I can't believe they just turned around and did one amazing album and then came out with this amazing album right afterwards. This time Neil Young was kind of wanting to join the group. They weren't sure if they wanted to add him in because he was known as someone who had a hard time working with others. He would quit groups all of a sudden out of nowhere. He would quit groups while you were touring. He would just stop showing up to the tours, and you're like, hey, we got these, obligations to go to these cities and play. People are paying money to see us play, and you decide just not to show up. So he did a lot of that stuff. So they weren't sure at first if they should add Neil Young. Obviously, Neil Young, part of Buffalo Springfield, went off and started having a solo career. I don't know if he had he had at least one, maybe two albums out by this point, I'm guessing. I forget when Everybody Knows This Nowhere might have came out. I don't know. I didn't look that up, but he obviously is going to go on and have an absolute incredible solo career. But he came on, and they eventually said, yeah, they decided to add Neil Young into the group, which is great. Like I said, it's like adding Michael Jordan to your already all-star team. And so you add Neil Young, absolutely great guitar player, singer-songwriter. though I don't think he added much to his group compared to the others. And what's so crazy about Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young is that they all could write songs, so they all kind of divvied out. They each wrote like 2 songs or so for the album. So you're able to get a lot of different. You didn't have to have one person really, shoulder all the work. Everybody can pitch in because they all could write songs and all that, and they all could lead sing, and so it's a very interesting group. It's like the first super group, I would say. Some I think would say maybe what Cream or Yardbirds maybe was super groups. I don't know, but this was to me like the first like really great super group that really worked out. Obviously, Traveling Wilburys later on would get together. But yeah, so Neil Young joins in, and they come out with the second album, Deja Vu, which is a great name for an album. Yeah, one of their most famous, the best one with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, I think. I have one album ahead of this, but it's Crosby, Stills, Nash album. Anyway, so yeah, so that's how Neil Young kind of came into the group. This was #1 in the U.S. pop charts. It was a 7 times platinum album, so it did absolutely incredible. Of course, Crosby, Stills, Nash was already pretty popular after their first album in 1969. Did really well, and people were pretty hyped up for another album. So anytime they came out with an album, people were pretty hyped up because of that first album, I think, did so well. And so obviously this did incredibly well, did even better than the first one. From what I researched, it was the highest selling album for each member. So each member would never sell more albums on their own or another group. So this was like the peak of their success, it seems like, right here in 1970. There's 4 singles that came off this album. We got Woodstock, which was #11 in the U.S., #3 in Canada. It's written by Joni Mitchell, so it's not even written by one of the members of the group. It's one of their best rock songs, I say, because they were kind of a folk rock group, I would say. This is definitely one of their heavier rock songs on there. Pretty decent song. Definitely one of the ones I enjoy on here. I enjoy about every song on here, though. It's like there's not a bad song on this album. But I think Joni Mitchell even played the song on one of her solo albums, which I've never heard, but it'd be interesting to hear her just sing by herself, because it seems like just made for Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young. Then we got Teach Your Children, went #16 in the U.S. and #8 in Canada, which I was kind of surprised. I thought this was more of like a #1 hit for them. I thought this was one of their bigger hits. But yeah, still, did well. It does really well in Canada, in fact. We got Our House, Graham Nash song, went #30 in the U.S. And then Carry On was actually the B-side on the Teach Your Children single. So it wasn't a single, which is weird because Carry On is one of their best songs on here. You would think it would be a big hit single. In fact, when I saw Crosby, Stills, and Nash in concert in 2005, they opened the concert with Carry On, which was really a great opener. It's an opener to this album, opener in the concert. Really great one because you get that Carry On. That harmony is just absolutely amazing when they start that song. Anyway, so yeah, really great one. Interesting. When I remember reading about when they made this album, they were writing it. Everybody was pitching in. Like I said, everybody had like maybe 2 or so songs, and then you have a Joni Mitchell song in here, and then they felt like, oh, we need, like the first album, they had Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, just blew everybody away. When Stephen Stills came in with that song, it was like, yeah, this was this is a really great song, and it became the biggest song off that album and their biggest song of all time. And so when they were doing this, they're like, man, we need another, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes song. We need another, just absolute killer song. It seemed like from what Graham Nash wrote, I remember he said that, yeah, I just felt like I was missing something, like a really big hit. And so Stills went away, came back, and was like, okay, I think I have it. And it was Carry On. He came out and played them Carry On. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's the big hit. Anyways, and so that starts out the album. It's not nearly as good as Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, still very good. And Sweet Judy Blue Eyes started the Crosby, Stills, and Nash album, in fact. So we got this, what they consider maybe their best song on the album. They like to start with their best song, it seems like. Really hit you with their best at the beginning, so the audience is like, wow, this is their first song. I can't wait to hear the rest. Anyway, so those are the kind of 4 singles, but a lot of good stuff here. Like I said, Deja Vu, the title song, is a David Crosby song, and I think my favorite song of his that he's done with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Very interesting song, very intricate, complex, different changes throughout the song. yeah, definitely like it for uniqueness. He also did I Almost Cut My Hair, which was a song I never really liked that much, but I was listening to this last time and I was kind of like, you know what, I kind of like the song. I don't know why, I've never been like a huge fan of the song, it's like known as David Crosby's, one of David Crosby's biggest song contributions, and one they play in concert. I don't know. I just never been and I said Dave Crosby is maybe my least favorite member of the band. No offense to him. I just really love Nash and Stills and Young are just absolutely top tier. I think singer songwriters. He's not quite at that level, like I said, but still he wrote some good stuff here. And Almost Cut My Hair is still a pretty fun song to listen to. I enjoyed it this last time. Going, man, it's not bad. Anyways, but yeah, that's one of their big ones off here. Neil Young, I said Neil Young didn't seem like he contributed as much because he'd come in and then he would leave, and then I don't know how many albums, I forget. They did a couple albums together. I feel like Crosby, Stills, Nash was really the core of the group, and Neil Young's kind of this guy that comes along every once in a while to, hey, let me join in on the fun. But he would often leave the group. Like I said, he was very unreliable, it seemed like. But he did bring in Helpless, which is a really good song on here, one of my favorite on the album. Neil Young's vocal is absolutely amazing, and it almost feels like a solo song, like he could have just done it by himself. But you add in the Crosby, Stills, and Nash in the backing vocals, and it's like, oh man, this just elevates the song into even better status. Same thing about Our House. It seems like just a Graham Nash solo song, but then you add in the other voices in the background, and it's like, okay, now this is a great song. They can do that to any song. It's like, oh, this is an okay song. Oh, this is an amazing song with these voices. But yeah, definitely one of the greats. So now I get to my top 3 songs on the album, which is very hard. There's so many good songs on here. I always do this top 3. I came up with 3, though I'm not like totally confident that these are my 3 favorite. These are my 3 favorite for the moment. Number 3, I put Teacher Children. To be honest, Nash is my favorite member. I love his high. He has a real high tenor vocals. When you hear them harmonizing, he's usually hitting the very high note. And I always like those kind of guys that can really hit those high notes and really add something to the sound. Anyways, and just by himself, he's just an absolute amazing singer, I think. I love his vocals. And he writes some really good songs here. But Teacher Children, I said one of the big hits, has kind of this country-ish feel to it. The guitar has like a country-ish western, which I'm not always crazy about, but it works in this song. Again, great harmonies here. Interesting song. Not sure if I agree with the message maybe, but overall, yeah, great song. Number 2, I'm going to go with Carry On, the beginning song. Again, it's got some of the great harmonies where it's almost like the instruments just cut out and it's just their voices, like a cappella, and this, they do that carry on, love is coming, and they really hit these really cool high notes in there. And I'd say the only problem I have with the song, it seems like a little too long, which was a little shorter. And it seems like there's bits where it's just instruments, but overall, just you have to love the amazing vocal and harmonies on the song, and pretty good instrumentation overall. A lot of good instrument playing there. Number 1, I'm gonna go with Our House. It's always been one of my favorites of theirs. One of my favorite Graham Nash songs. Again, it's just a great love song, and he wrote it because he was dating Joni Mitchell at the time, and they were like out shopping, and he bought a vase, and in the song they talk about, I brought the vase that I bought today. And he was just writing the song about what if like him and Joni, settled down and, got married, and they had this house, and it's just this really lovely picture of, being in love, I think, and settling down and, and just having a nice day, just sitting by the fire. You have 2 cats in the yard, 2 dogs in the yard, or something like that. Everything now is easy because of you. I mean, just a really lovely sentiment. And again, great vocals by Nash. And yeah, and he does that la 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 la. And it's like, man, that's just absolutely amazing with all the harmonies and together with the 4 voices. And just a really great chorus, Our house is a very, very nice house, nice house. Yeah, just absolutely one of the most soothing songs is just sit back and listen and go, oh, this makes me happy, makes me feel good. So I put Our House in here. A lot of other great songs that could have been in there, but that's my top 3. So yeah, so feel free to comment. What do you think about this album? Is it one of your favorite? What do you think about Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and all that? Love to read your comments, and just thank you to everybody for watching this video. Thank you for liking it. And I want to thank all the subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a good day.